The miracle of the loaves and fishes, or sometimes called the feeding of the 5,000. This biblical account in our gospel today is probably one that you've heard before. With 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, Jesus is able to feed thousands so that they're all filled and there's plenty of leftover. Now, sometimes when we are given explanations of some of the passages in the Bible, we can get some that are a little bit unique and even strange. So there's one interpretation of this passage. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it's one that I know is out there. Is that this miracle really wasn't Jesus multiplying the bread and the fish, but rather the miracle was Jesus was able to convince everybody to share all the food that they had stored away and were selfishly not giving to one another. And that was actually the miracle. And at first it might sound okay because, it's nice to share. But it's actually a really bad interpretation. Christian charity isn't based simply upon sharing what we ourselves have or what we've gained by our own efforts. No, Christian charity is a generosity knowing that ultimately God is the one who provides for us all. And to see this, we can delve into this passage. Imagine yourself being there, maybe as one of the apostles. So the crowds have been following Jesus now for some time, and it keeps growing as they see and hear the many things that he does. And imagine this great multitude coming forward. Remember, the 5,000 just refers to the men. It doesn't even include the women and the children that are also there. So Jesus comes up to you like he comes up to Philip, and he asks, "Where can we buy food so that everyone may eat?" Okay, Jesus, well, hospitality is a really good thing, but it's a little bit much. We don't have any food. There isn't any place here to buy that kind of food. And even if we could buy that food, it would take over 200 days' wages, and then they still would barely get enough to eat. Think of putting on a Thanksgiving bazaar or parish breakfast with zero planning and no resources at all. That would actually be easier to do than what Jesus does here. The only thing they could come up with is 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. So, but Jesus is undaunted by these vast numbers. Instead, he takes what they have, he blesses the bread and fish, giving thanks to his Father. The food is broken, and it's distributed to everyone. And here's the point where some will make that claim that Jesus didn't actually multiply anything, but they just shared what they already had. Because it doesn't say that suddenly when Jesus did the blessing that there was a huge pile of bread there, a bunch of fish. No, it doesn't say that. And that's true. But it also doesn't say that everybody just started sharing. But what it does say is that it was only the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that were distributed. So imagine, being there with the apostles. Jesus has asked you to help pass the food out to everybody. And so he's got this little meager pile of food. And so you go and you take some and you go out and you distribute it. And then you run out. So you come back and guess what? It's still there. So you take some more and you go out and you distribute that. And you run out, you come back, and it's still there. You see, the miracle of this multiplication occurred as the apostles were distributing the food. He didn't multiply it all up front, but he kept it from running out. Thus, when the apostles collected all the leftovers, there was a greater number of fragments than there was at the beginning. So there's a few lessons we can learn from this miracle of Jesus. And the first lesson is that only God can provide all that we need. We can't provide it for ourselves. for our families, for the needs of the poor, for the world. We're completely dependent upon God. And that's why the sharing interpretation is so wrong. Because that idea assumes that we have enough on our own, that all we have to do is be convinced to give what we have. But that's not true. Whether it's material needs like food or spiritual needs for our soul, only God will be able to fully satisfy. Only the Lord can provide the fullness of what we need. So the second lesson is how God provides this. He usually doesn't give us it all right away, but little by little as it's needed. That's what the multiplication only happened as the food was being given away. But that takes trust. And sometimes we don't trust, instead we fear, and we think that we need to have enough before we can give it away. So we might think, well, I give more to charities or the church, as soon as I get a better paid job, or as soon as I have more saved up, then I'll do that. Or I'll serve and volunteer when I have enough time. I've got too many things. Or I'm too busy even to pray or to study the scriptures. But, another time, that's when I'll do it, when I have time. Or maybe I don't know enough yet about my faith in order to share it with others, but as soon as I learn more, then that's when I'll start being a witness to the faith. But the multiplication teaches us that God provides as we live generously. He's not going to give it all beforehand. He's going to give it through that process of us giving it away. The bread and the fish were only multiplied as they were given. And so when we're generous with whatever it is that we have, money, time, ourselves, that's when we'll discover Jesus will multiply it into an abundance. We shouldn't expect in our lives God to give us everything up front, because spiritual gifts multiply when they're given away. And the final lesson is what God provides to us. The greatest source of life from God, the source from which we're able to have that kind of trust and able to live generously, is foreshadowed in his multiplication of the loaves and fishes. Jesus blessing the bread, giving thanks, breaking it, and distributing it to the crowds should make us think of another time when he did something similar. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Of course, that comes from the Last Supper, when Jesus gives us his body and his blood as our food, the Eucharist. What we receive here at every Mass is Jesus himself in Holy Communion. He is the greatest source of life from God. That is what he provides. So today, as we reflect on the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, we begin the 6th chapter of John's Gospel. And as an entire church, we continue over the next 4 weeks to read the entirety of this chapter. And in this multiplication, Jesus prepares us to go deeply into what the church calls his bread of life discourse. A beautiful explanation of the Eucharist. So as we go through those Gospels and the kind of series these next several weeks, we want to allow Jesus to convince us that only he can provide what we long for. That he provides what we need when we need it, multiplying it little by little. And that he provides himself in the Blessed Sacrament for our spiritual food.